Hello again from Metro Manila, the Philippines, Southeastern Asia, and happy and blessed second Saturday of February 2023. In 3 days, not only will we celebrate the Valentine's Day or the Heart's Day, at least in many, if not most countries of the world, but in South Africa, particularly, two families and numerous members of other families will mark a very tragic, very sad anniversary. That of the murder of 29-year-old model, television presenter, reality television star, legal assistant, and aspiring future lawyer, Reeva Steenkamp. The murder was committed by her latest boyfriend, Paralympic and Olympic sprinter Oscar Pistorius, at Pistorius's home in a maximum security neighborhood of Pretoria, one of South Africa's three capitals. At the time of the murder, Pistorius was 26 years old. Pistorius and Steenkamp had only dated for 3 months at the time of her murder, and just hours earlier, around 6 p.m. South African time, on the evening of February the 13th, 2013, Reeva Steenkamp had arrived by her driving her small vehicle, a Mini, through the gate of the neighborhood where Mr. Pistorius was living, according to one testimony or one expert statement, only about 10 minutes before Mr. Pistorius himself arrived by car. And apparently the evening had passed fine. They had eaten dinner, according to Mr. Pistorius' account, and had then eventually walked up to his bedroom. And Mr. Pistorius had used his iPad, while Miss Steenkamp had apparently had her yoga exercises. However, according to one source, Reeva Steenkamp had eaten her last meal at 1 a.m. on Valentine's Day, February the 14th, 2013. Sometime between 3 and 4 a.m., if I remember correctly, based on the accounts of the murder which I have watched, or at least listened to here on YouTube, something terrible happened. At least a few neighbors were either woken up or startled, or both, by sounds of an argument coming from Mr. Pistorius' home, including a woman's blood-curdling screams. What in all likelihood had happened was that the couple had started to argue over some issues. They had had a volatile 3-month dating relationship, and something like, or approximately 10% of the surviving WhatsApp text messages by Ms. Steenkamp indicated that often she was unhappy with Mr. Pistorius' behavior, that he had, for example, criticized her for the way in which she spoke English, her accent, and she also noted that he had come across as possessive and rude, and had seemed to flirt with other young women despite their official dating relationship. And she commented in that text message, "You really have dated a lot of people," and that was true. Although before Miss Steenkamp, Mr. Pistorius had dated another model, Samantha Taylor, who was born in 1992 or 1993. In other words, she was 9 or 10 years younger than the unfortunate Miss Steenkamp. And 6 or 7 years younger than Mr. Pistorius. And actually, until that evening in early November 2012, when Mr. Pistorius and Miss Steenkamp for the first time appeared together as a couple in a sports event, Miss Taylor had still thought that Mr. Pistorius wanted to date her, despite the fact that they had had a turbulent relationship. Miss Taylor's experiences that she later testified about in the first trial against Mr. Pistorius in 2014, and also in at least a couple of interviews, had ranged all the way from very romantic and sweet to very threatening experiences. And Mr. Pistorius, perhaps because of his disability, because due to a birth defect, his both feet were amputated below the knee when he was only 11 months old, and since then he was using or has been using prosthetics of artificial legs. So maybe partly because of his disability, Mr. Pistorius wanted to show off that he wasn't a boy or later a man of low self-esteem, that he could still run fast, he could still drive fast cars and ride on fast motorboats. And indeed, a few years before he murdered his latest girlfriend, Miss Steenkamp, he had been involved in a serious speedboat or motorboat accident, which had left him with major injuries and had come quite close to, in fact, killing him. Also, June Steenkamp, Reeva's mother, spoke in an interview that, without being more specific, her daughter, a famous daughter, had stated that they had been fighting a lot. I assume that it meant arguing a lot. And Mrs. Steenkamp noted that her daughter did not like conflicts. Puti Como, a famous black South African model, actress and TV presenter and reality television star, who was one of the celebrity contestants in season 5 of Tropical Island of Treasure, a joint South African Jamaican production, at least in that season, because the island games took place in Jamaica in 2012. Then Miss or Mrs. Como noted in an interview for the documentary Reeva, the Model You Thought You Knew, that Reeva, who was her housemate, staying in the same house during the Tropical Island of Treasure season 5, noted that Reeva didn't like conflict and didn't like schedules, or didn't like competition, sorry. And they called her Mama Bear. And indeed, Steenkamp had given a very sweet, tender hug to the first contestant to be eliminated, Miss Genevieve Amy Arulapan, a customs satisfaction secretary, who was one of the 7 ordinary young South African adults in the contest. And Miss Arulapan had already packed her bag on the morning of the day when she would be eliminated from the contest. So Miss Steenkamp comforted her with that big hug and told her that everything happens for a reason, and told her not to worry and not to be despondent, despite the fact that she hadn't performed even nearly as sociably or otherwise skillfully as she thought she could or should have performed. So Reeva definitely had a big heart for those who were hurting. Actually, close to her untimely death, she was hoping to become a fully qualified lawyer. She was already a legal assistant, having graduated with a law degree from the Nelson Mandela University back in 2005, when incidentally she had been a contestant for Miss Port Elizabeth, the city where she had lived. Um, but Reeva hadn't placed even close to the top in that beauty contest. So Reeva had a big heart for those South African girls and women who were threatened by violence or who were even victims of violence, because South Africa, despite the fact that it is one of the wealthiest countries in Africa, is also a notably violent and polarized and unequal society. It has one of the hugest income gaps between the rich and the poor, according to the Gini index, even considerably wider than that of the Philippines, for example, or among the developed countries than that of the United States. And Reeva Steenkamp had been staying for the last 6 months of her life, uh, since August 2012, at the home of Gina Myers, a rather famous South African makeup artist who had become her best friend about 6 years before her untimely death. And if Reeva Steenkamp had been able to finish the speech that she was going to give, but death prevented her from doing so, at a high school somewhere in South Africa, about the need for the South Africans, including the South African students, to unite in order to secure the lives and health and studies and future careers of this. If she had been able to finish it on time, or if she had decided to postpone her date with Oscar Pistorius so that she wouldn't have decided to stay overnight at his home, but had instead gone to the Myers family's home, perhaps her life could have been saved. Anyway, numerous accounts about Mr. Pistorius stated that while he could be really nice, funny, sociable, he also could be volatile emotionally. He could have rather sudden and sharp mood swings, and he was prone to threatening people with violence and or guns. And also, he had a certain amount of recklessness in him, especially when he was traveling by car or then by speedboat or motorboat. He liked speed, maybe as a compensation for his physical disability. And indeed, in an interview that she gave in 2014, Mr. Pistorius' second to last girlfriend, assuming that he will have no more girlfriends after his possible release on parole or conditional release, which could come as early as in March 2023. Samantha Taylor stated that she could have been the victim, but as it turned out, God spared her young life. And she was very disappointed in Mr. Pistorius's lack of commitment to their relationship, their dating relationship, and the fact that numerous times he argued loudly with her and at least a few times threatened her. While Miss Steenkamp was known for her sweet and friendly personality, rather a reconciler than a conflict creator, and she had many more committed friends than Mr. Pistorius. And as far as her dating relationships were concerned, she had had two long term boyfriends. One, a horse racer another one. Was he involved somehow in cosmetics or fashion industry? I'm not sure. But they had broken up in 2012, and then she had briefly dated what has become her last murders was in November 2012. So let's look at some of the facts about both of them. We first go to their biographies. Of course, I'm not going to read the biographies word by word. Anyway, Reeva Rebecca Steenkamp was born on August the 19th, 1983, and was murdered at the age of 29 on February the 14th, 2013. She modeled for FHM magazine and was the first face of Avon Cosmetics in South Africa. And it should be noted that she was rather short for a top model, only 1 meter 71 centimeters or 5 feet 7.5 inches tall. But she made up then for those missing centimeters or inches by being very friendly personality and by having a notably beautiful face. She had done modeling already since her teenage years. But she was an aspiring future lawyer at the time of her murder. She once worked as the live roaming presenter for fashion TV in South Africa and starred in television advertisements for Toyota Land Cruiser, Clover the One, Reds, and Alder Pinpop. She was a celebrity contestant on the British Broadcasting Corporation lifestyle show Baking Made Easy in 2012 and on Tropic Island of Treasure Season 5, which aired on South African Broadcasting Corporation Channel 3, tragically in February 2013. So Steenkamp was born in Cape Town, that is in southwestern South Africa, to Barry Steenkamp, a horse trainer, and his second wife, June Nee Marshall, previously Colburn. June was born in Blackburn, Britain. So Reeva had 2 older half-siblings from her father and mother's respective previous marriages, Adam Steenkamp and Simone Colburn. The family later moved to Port Elizabeth, where she attended St. Dominic's Priory School. After school, she studied law at the University of Port Elizabeth, which became part of Nelson Mandela Metropolitan University, from which she graduated with a Bachelor of Laws degree in 2005. Steenkamp applied to the bar in late 2011 and hoped to become a qualified legal advocate by the age of 30. So she had begun modeling at the age of 14, in other words, either in 1997 or 1998. She was a finalist in the Weekend Post Faces of the Future competition in 2004 and in the Herald Miss Port Elizabeth contest in 2005. She also modeled for the jewelry company Savannah Diamonds. She was a celebrity face of the Spirit Day anti-bullying campaign in 2012. At the time of her murder, Steenkamp was signed up to appear on season 5 of the reality TV program Tropic Island of Treasure. She was a keen horse rider until she had a near fatal accident in her early 20s and had to learn to walk again. After that, she never rode a horse again. On the South African celebrity circuit, she was a regular A-list guest at red carpet events and a noted socialite on the Johannesburg party scene. So on Valentine's Day 2013, her last boyfriend, Oscar Pistorius, fired 4 shots through the door of a locked bathroom cubicle in his Pretoria home. In desperation and the fear of losing her life, she had fled. And then 3 of those bullets struck Steenkamp, who was on the other side. Immediately after this, Pistorius proceeded to break down the bathroom door with a cricket bat to reach Steenkamp. And he tried to render emergency medical assistance and called for help. One of the first responders to the scene was a neighbor, Dr. Johan Stipp, who did a jaw lift maneuver on Steenkamp in an attempt to open her airway. In his analysis of the situation, he noted that she lacked a peripheral pulse, showed no sign of breathing movements, and that her pupils were fixed dilated. In other words, that she had been mortally or fatally wounded. Her body was cremated at Victoria Park Crematorium in Port Elizabeth on February the 19th, 2013, and the service was conducted by Pastor Kurt Sutton of the Oasis Family Church in Port Elizabeth. Mr. Pistorius was arrested and charged with murder. September 2004, he found not guilty of murder, but guilty of culpable homicide in the case. And in October 2014, he was sentenced to 5 years in jail, but only served 10 months. However, in December 2015, the South African Supreme Court of Appeals overturned the culpable homicide verdict and found Mr. Pistorius guilty of murder. In July 2016, Judge Masipa sentenced Pistorius to 6 years in prison for murder. However, in November 2017, the Court of Appeal extended Mr. Pistorius' jail term to 13 years and 5 months. But as I said, he's eligible for parole or conditional release in 2000. Carl, he was born in November 1986. And due to a congenital effect, he was born missing the outside of both feet and both fibulae. So that was the main reason for his toddler amputation. He participated in 3 Paralympics: in the Summer Paralympics of 2004 in Athens, Greece, 2008 in Beijing, China, and 2012 in London, Britain. So the latest one of these Paralympics was held only about 6 months before he became Reeva Steenkamp's murderer. At the 2011 World Championships in Athletics, Mr. Pistorius was the first amputee to win a non-disabled world track medal. And at the 2012 Summer Olympics in London, Mr. Pistorius was the first double-leg amputee participant. His parents were Henke and Sheila Pistorius. He has an elder brother, Carl, and a younger sister, Amy. Tragically, Mrs. Sheila Pistorius died, I think, of an allergic reaction to some substance or medicine, or of some allergic complication already at the age of 43, when Mr. Pistorius was just 15 years old. And he was devastated by her death. So despite his disability, despite having to wear prosthetics or false legs, he played rugby union at Pretoria Boys High School, in addition to water polo and tennis at provincial level between the ages of 11 and 13. He even tried club Olympic wrestling and trained at Johnny Brooks's garage gym in Pretoria. After a serious rugby knee injury in June 2003 at age 16, he was introduced to running in January 2004, shortly after turning 17, while undergoing rehabilitation at the University of Pretoria's High Performance Center with coach Ampi Lowe. His first racing blades were fitted by South African prosthesist Francois van der Bat. Mr. Pistorius began studying for a Bachelor of Commerce in Business Management with Sports Science at the University of Pretoria in 2006, but he never apparently graduated. He took part in the 2004 Summer Paralympics in Athens and came third overall in the T44 100-meter event, and he won the 200-meter final. In 2005, he finished sixth in the non-disabled South African Championships in 400-meter dash, and at the same year's Paralympic World Cup, he won gold in 100 meters and 200 meters. At the 2006 IPC Athletics World Championships, he won gold in the 100, 200, and 400 meter dashes, breaking the world record in 200 meters. In March 2007, aged 20, he set a disability sports world record for 400 meters, 46.56 seconds at the South African Senior Athletics Championships in Durban. And he became the world record holder of the 100 and 200 meter disabled sprinters events, male sprinters, of course, with times of 10.91 and 21.58 seconds, respectively, or in that order. He was unable to attend the 400 meter race or participate in the 400 meter race in the IAAF Grand Prix competition in Helsinki, Finland, Northern Europe, Helsinki being one of my several hometowns in Finland, in July 2005 because of school commitments. In the 2008 Summer Paralympics in Beijing, he was able to, with the gold medal in the 100 meter dash and in the 200 meter dash and even in the 400 meter dash. He participated in the 2011 IAAF World Championships in Daegu, South Korea, in the 400 meter dash, where he advanced to the semifinals before being eliminated, and 4x400 meters. However, he was not selected to run in the finals because he had the slowest split time of 46.20 seconds. At the 2012 100 meters male relay, team finished 8th out of 9 teams in that event's final. However, with the season's best time, and Pistorius was the anchor, running the final leg in 45.9 seconds. At the 2012 Summer Paralympics, he won 400 meters, the 400 meter dash, Brazil's Miss Reeva Steenkamp's murderer. So 4 by 100 meters relay, where the South African disabled athletes team set a team world record of 41.78 seconds. And he also won the 400-meter dash of disabled athletes, breaking the Paralympic record with a time of 46.68 seconds. So he was definitely a successful athlete, and he was popular, especially among those people who either overlooked his mood swings and other eccentricities or did not know about them. So he has met Miss Steenkamp's parents, which is a requirement in South Africa for those people convicted of murder who want to be released. Well, if of course the parents, and apparently Miss Steenkamp's parents have forgiven him for the murder. He has never, however, publicly admitted that he murdered his girlfriend in cold blood, but has insisted that it was an accident and that supposedly he thought or believed that there was an intruder at his home, even though he lived in a maximum security guarded compound or neighborhood of Pretoria. He claimed that during the early morning hours of February the 14th, 2013, just before killing Miss Steenkamp, he woke up, went onto the balcony of his bedroom or of his residence's second floor to bring the fan in, electric fan meaning, and closed the sliding doors, the blinds and the curtains. So he claimed that, or his defense team claimed, or defense lawyer claimed that he had woken up because of heat and humidity. And Miss Steenkamp was already awake and asked him if he was having trouble sleeping. Walking around on his stumps without his prosthetic legs, he opened the balcony door and brought in a fan to try and cool the room down. So once again, according to his account, while doing this, he claimed to have heard a noise coming from the bathroom. Thinking that an intruder had broken into the house, he got his gun from under the bed and whispered to Miss Steenkamp to call the police. However, Chief Prosecutor Jerry Nell claimed that the killing was premeditated, and there is an ample amount of evidence to support that version. And that Mr. Pistorius had deliberately murdered Miss Steenkamp after they had had an argument. Defense lawyer Roux pointed to Vermeulen, prosecution witness, that if Pistorius had been on his stumps, he would not have been able to balance while swinging a cricket bat with enough force to break the bathroom's door. During his trial, Mr. Pistorius had frequent emotional outbursts. He cried, for example, when Miss Steenkamp's bloody head was shown. That photograph had been taken for the forensic legal purposes. He also howled and vomited. However, prosecutor Jerry Nell, known as the Bull Terrier for his aggressive interrogations, claimed that Mr. Pistorius had not shown any true remorse or deep regret for his crime, and accused Mr. Pistorius of getting emotional in court in order or because he was getting frustrated due to the improbability of his version of the events. Eventually, Nell requested a mental health assessment, which was carried out by psychiatrist Muriel Vorster, who concluded that Pistorius had an anxiety disorder stemming from his childhood. Because his parents separated when he was 6, incidentally, also Miss Steenkamp's parents separated when she was a child. But they then, due to the shock and grief surrounding her sudden murder, they decided to reconcile. And since then, apparently, they have lived together as a married couple again. Apparently, his mother, who died at the early age of 43 already back in 2002, had slept with a firearm under her pillow. Given his disability, according to Ms. or Mrs. Forster, Mr. Pistorius was more likely to respond to any threat with fight rather than flight. However, the evaluation also found that Mr. Pistorius had fully enough understood what he was doing. In other words, his mental issues or problems did not cloud his moral judgment. He knew what was right, he knew what was wrong. However, the evaluation also stated that he was suffering at the time from post-traumatic stress disorder and would need to continue psychiatric care, or he could become suicidal. However, Sean Renz, manager of the International Firearm Trading Academy in Walkerville, testified at the trial that Pistorius had a great love and enthusiasm for guns. According to his testimony, Mr. Pistorius had bought a Smith & Wesson 500 revolver handgun from him and had wanted Renz to get 5 other particular firearms for him. Mr. Pistorius told Renz that he was going to apply for a collector's license. Mr. Renz also described an incident which happened months before Pistorius killed Steenkamp, where he had heard a noise in the house, he had drawn his gun, and had gone into a combat or fighting mode, while the noise turned out to be coming from his laundry machine. According to Mr. Renz, Mr. Pistorius was well aware of the rules on gun use in South Africa and how to deal with the intruders. In addition to murder, Mr. Pistorius was charged with 2 other gun-related charges. The first alleged one had occurred when he had recklessly or carelessly shot his gun out of the open sunroof of a car the previous year, so in 2012, and the second one that he had fired someone else's handgun at a restaurant only a few weeks before shooting and killing Miss Steenkamp. According to his former girlfriend, Samantha Taylor, Mr. Pistorius' sunroof incident had occurred when he had become angry after he had been stopped for speeding by a police officer. According to Miss Taylor, Mr. Pistorius kept his gun with him all the time and that he had great difficulty controlling his temper at times. Yeah. this video, so that it won't become too long, I'll read selected statements from a number of newspaper articles. So this is an interview of Miss Samantha Taylor by ABC News organization's Matt Gutman, or channels, for the 2020 program, before the verdict had been delivered. At the time of Steenkamp's murder, Taylor was 20 years old, if I interpret the statements correctly. She had met Pistorius at a rugby match in 2010. She had been just 17 years old, he had been 24. At the first, during the first weeks of their relationship, she had been impressed by him. He had behaved very charmingly, respectfully, and kindly. Over time, however, Miss Taylor had realized that Mr. Pistorius had a short fuse. In other words, he easily lost his temper, even for petty issues such as not taking her plate to the kitchen, and that he could be jealous and possessive. And he often even looked through Miss Taylor's cell phone and asked her who her friends were, and wanted to control her life. And life with Pistorius, according to Miss Taylor, was living on the edge. And she recalled when he would drive his car, I don't know if this is an accurate statement, 200 miles per hour on the highway. So that would mean about 322 kilometers per hour. But even if it was 200 kilometers per hour, that would already be speeding. Some 124 miles per hour. There were also times, Miss Taylor said, when Mr. Pistorius was an emotional wreck. According to her testimony or interview, she had heard her cry about 300 times. Yes. And given the fact that Pistorius lived in a heavily guarded neighborhood, his claim to which he has stuck, that he thought that there was an intruder, that is a burglar, at his home, simply did not seem credible. Also, given the fact that at least a few neighbors had heard him and Miss Steenkamp scream shortly before the fatal shots had been fired by him, definitely contradicted his version of the events, especially his claim that he had been on his stumps. No, definitely not, because if he had been on his stumps, he would have been significantly shorter, something like maybe 18, 19 centimeters shorter than Miss Steenkamp. And hardly would have been able to fire the fatal shots in a balanced way. Chances are that Miss Steenkamp actually had repacked her bag and was preparing to leave because of their argument. Given the fact that Mrs. June Steenkamp had testified that her daughter had told her before being murdered that they had been fighting a lot, although she had not specifically stated over what issues and in what ways. According to at least one or two accounts I've read online in the mass media, at least on the website of one of the main Finnish tabloid evening newspapers, the Evening News or Evening Messages, Ilta-Sanomat in Finnish. Mr. Pistorius, while in jail, has stopped uh, practicing sports, has grown a beard, and has started to smoke, and amazingly has become a professing Christian. But he should then admit that he murdered his girlfriend, probably out of possessiveness, out of jealousy, out of anger, out of frustration at having once again failed in his relationship, his friendship, because of his volatile and reckless person and possessive personality. And that he will deeply repent of his crimes and sins for the rest of his life. May God have mercy on him and on all of us, including, of course, his family and the family of Miss Steenkamp and all the other people involved, and the people who knew both Mr. Pistorius and Miss Steenkamp, and then especially those who were friends of and fans of Miss Steenkamp, but also those who were or still possibly are friends and or fans of Mr. Pistorius. Bye bye.